and everybody should see the flag that we are recording. Good evening, everyone. This is Dick, WB2JPQ. I'm one of the system facilitators here on the East Coast Reflector. I'm kind of better known as the Godfather. I got that name back a few years ago, and I can't seem to get rid of it. I'm delighted to have Kevin and David here tonight, two of the greatest between HamVoip and repeater builders that there are. I'd like to start out, Kevin, I'd like to start out with you. You once told me a story on how repeater builders got started, and I kind of thought that was pretty clever. If you'd like to start out and just tell us a little bit about that, then I'll go to David and kind of break the ice and lighten it up here tonight and get started that way. Then I have some questions. We'll go right into the questions, and I will kind of act as the mediator here tonight and keep the fights down. So, Kevin, why don't you tell us how how repeater builders got started? I found that very interesting when you told me that.
So years ago, when I started building repeaters, I started taking some notes and so on, and had a pretty full, uh, manual full of stuff that I would refer to. And then, of course, in the mid '90s, this wonderful thing called the internet came along, and anybody that knows me knows I was a fairly disorganized person and had stuff, all over the place. And I decided that I was going to go ahead and build a website because I realized that from anywhere that I was, I could access this information that I had collected. So, the local ISP that we got our dial-up internet from had some free website hosting, and I decided to put some information there. And before long, I started getting some emails from some people saying, "Oh, we're really happy that you're sharing this information." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, that's not for you. That's for me." But of course, growing up I'm a second generation ham, and realizing that that information may be of value to someone else, uh, I actually started putting a little effort into organizing it a little better. And I got into a linking system with a friend of mine down in Cumberland, Maryland, KCKK3L, and I had a system that we called the Target Link system. And it was a system of 3 or 4 repeaters that were originally tied together with RF. And I made what was originally called the Target Technical Information Database, TTID. TTID is what Repeater Builder uh, morphed out of. So we continue to put information there. What was modestly a few articles of information that I had authored and uh, gathered together from doing this stuff for the last 40 years has turned into gigs and gigs and gigs of information that's available free of charge. Repeater Builder is uh, not a not intended for profit, and so we get information on uh, all kind of things. There's unfortunately companies going by the wayside all the time, and we try our best to host that information for free. Of course, I think probably the biggest project that we ever undertook was when the GE Master series became available on CD, and uh, saw people actually selling those CDs on, uh, on eBay and different places. We just felt that that wasn't right. So we got the approval from General Electric to go ahead and publish that information on the internet and make it available. And we've been doing that now for about 20 years. For, the GE, what we call the GE Master uh, uh, index of information, has all the General Electric uh, LBIs and information data that they had produced. And of course, we're doing the same thing now with a lot of the different companies that unfortunately have folded up, gone out of business for one reason or another. Hamtronics is another one that that fell by the wayside because of the things that happened there with the owner. So anyway, that's the story.
Well, thank you, Kevin. That's how I met Kevin, was the Target system. Uh, many, many years ago. I used to go down to Midlothian outside of Richmond, and I used to work the Target system. Thank you, Kevin. David, would you like to tell us how HamVoip came about?
Absolutely. Hey, good evening, everybody. Uh, I guess HamVoip really got started about almost 25 years ago now, when in the very early infancy of All-Star Link and Asterisk. I was using Asterisk commercially as a phone PBX for my business and some other side projects and whatnot, and found the All-Star software, which was it was App RPT, what it was called back then, the very early infancy of that software back long, long ago, when the quad PCI radio card was the adapter that was being used for PCs. And that was the only thing that was out there. Well, as it started to evolve more and more, I was kind of following it there. 9/11/2001 had happened, and after that, I was wanting to get into it, but the quad PCI cards basically dried up and were no longer available. So I kind of put it on hold for a while until the DMK URIs came out about 2007 or 8. The first one started showing up, and got some of those. And at that point, I've been working with repeaters and designing and maintaining repeaters for I guess 30 plus years. But the scenario happened where I needed to be able to maintain repeaters on tall TV towers that were not easy to get to, and the current folks that were doing it were having to go up those towers on a fairly regular basis to make various setting adjustments and all kinds of little peaks and tweaks on the analog controllers that were in use then. And I'm like, I want to be able to do that from the ground. I don't want to have to go up the tower every time I need to adjust the audio level up or down, or the squelch, or do this adjustment or that adjustment. And as it was back then, it was happening maybe about once a quarter. Well, as I got some DMK URIs, and this was about 2007 or 8 circa timeframe, and built a custom image. Of course, back at that point, that you could only build custom images for the All-Star software, or App RPT as it was called back then still. And it evolved from there until I had a pretty good set of, I guess, change set based upon the original code that Jim Dixon was aware of, and I sent him copies of the code. Some of it got integrated, a lot of it didn't, most of it didn't. But to kind of fast forward, I got to maintaining more and more repeaters, and got to needing more and more sophisticated features, and needed to have them in locations where backup power and other kinds of things were not as easily controllable, I guess is the right word. So we need to run it off 12 volts. We have 12 volts for a little while till the site generator back kicks in. Need to have emergency power, etc. And about that time, Doug Crompton, our WD3D or WA3DSP, get his call sign right here, got into looking at the BeagleBone Blacks. I'd looked at the Raspberry Pi 1s for trying to get Asterisk running on them, and had very poor success with the slow speed of those boards, and of course, they were single processor, single core boards. But Doug was having success with the BeagleBone Black, or one of the BeagleBones, early BeagleBones, and he had it working. So I caught up with him, and I'm like, this is doing great. So I, at that point, loaded my custom image on there, and he was working on it as well. This was, I guess, about 2014, I believe it was. Now you can look back at the archives and see for sure when the date was. But that's what became HamVoip. So basically, at that point, we had a relatively custom image of what was Jim Dixon's release of All-Star Link, and it was running on the BeagleBone Blacks, and then finally on the Pis, the various Raspberry Pis from the Pi 2, 3, 4s, and now I've got it running on the Pi 5, though it's not released yet. And I'm, there are very few scenarios where the Pi 5 is needed, quite frankly, but that is a kind of a rambling overview of where it got to and where it came from. It's an incredible project. It has grown unbelievably over the last few years, and it's bursting at the seams at this point. So anyhow, I will leave it at that. So we're caught up to where we are today in 2024.
Well, thank you, David. Our first question tonight goes to Kevin, and it's from Alan, N5ALN. Alan?
Hey, good evening, Dick. Can y'all hear me?
We can.
All right. Hello, Kevin, David. We've got the Whiskey Alpha 5 Charlie Alpha Romeo group, Crittenden Amateur Radio Operators, got our normal, our weekly or monthly meeting going on tonight, and decided to join. Just want to say thank y'all for doing this. Kevin, I was talking with Dick before everything started. Told him we were a little bit familiar with All-Star, and I just kind of joked, and I said, hey, we bought about 10 or 12 of the RA series boards, and I said, I never got a Christmas card, though, so I guess I was checking to see when my Christmas card would arrive.
How many do we have to buy?
Or how many do we have to buy?
Well, I don't know. I've had people buy 50 already that I haven't sent them a Christmas card.
I thought we'd get started lightening it up a little bit with those guys.
Absolutely, but definitely appreciate your contribution. Putting a plug out there, those RA series boards are amazing, easy to work with. We've got a system across 2 clubs and 1 repeater association. So pretty much tri-state, Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee being the primary. How many repeaters, Michael? Probably 7 or 8 at the moment.
Between all the systems, probably
about 7 or 8. So it's a very good link system. So thank you to everybody who has contributed to the All-Star system. We very much appreciate it. And thanks again for putting this on, Dick. Just like Scott had a MTR question about interfacing, and I fought that battle, and I'm glad to help him out. I know a lot of, won't say hams, I'll say ticket holders love for you to beg them for the information. So appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, a lot of information was exchanged before the meeting got started. We made a lot of people happy. Our next question goes to David, and that's from AD6G, Larry from California. Where are you?
I'm still in California.
There you go.
Okay. I'm putting together an all-star node for a guy in town here, Todd, KD6DIQ. He's listening, I think. And I've been working for a few days trying to script stuff to essentially inhibit multiple connections from being made. And it seems to me there's probably something already out there that does that. I seem to remember something called Swiss Army knife or something, but I'm a little confused as to whether or not that was still available. I just started rolling my own. I'm pretty close to having it done, but maybe there's something better out there.
Well, there are several tools that I don't know if there were any tools that were per se that would not allow multiple connections, but there were several scripting because you'd have to have somebody connecting in order for the tool to get activated. But it's actually quite simple to do. But so you're wanting to limit your number of inbound connections?
Just connections total. I mean, he's going to be connecting to systems that they don't even want to see one more node connected to your node. Win system is pretty particular about that. So we're just going to limit it to one at a time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a good question. So that's mainly going to be outbound connections that you're looking at. So it's in the case of limiting inbound connections, then that's quite easy to do. First off, if you don't want any inbound connections, then you can just run the system between the NAT firewall behind the NAT firewall, and then you don't have any inbound to have to worry about. Or if you want to limit it to 1 or 2 or 5 or something like that, you can add rules in the dial plan at extensions.conf and limit it from the dial plan to you can look up the number of current connections that are there and say, okay, it's past 5. I'm not going to let any more and just disconnect it. So you can manage that from the dial plan. Outbound is more complicated, in that outbound is reactive. So that the scripts get called after you initiate an outbound connection. It doesn't go through the dial plan or anything like that. The best thing to do is for you. I'm not aware that there might have been some tools in the a part of the script kit that was the Swiss Army script kit, but I don't recall a tool that limited outbound connections in that.
Okay.
But
So,
I can do, I can get a list of this and kind of look at seeing a solution for it, and then follow up with you is probably the best plan.
okay, and that's fine. I'm real close to just having this done with a few scripts, so I just got to do some more fine tweaking to it, basically. So I just thought I'd inquire if I was duplicating something that was already done.
Right. Well, if you're trying to use something like Supermon or some web tool and you're connecting from that, well, then certainly you can go look at the number of connections you've already got, and you've already got one or more. Then you can say, okay, well, I won't let that connect operation occur. If you're punching it in via DTMF or something on that order, then it gets more complicated in that you'd have to have a script that ran from from your functions basically in the rpd.conf, and it went to look to see how many connections there were, and then if there was more than one or more than n connections, whatever you want, then not let it go on through. But if you from your functions, if you go ahead and just call the standard connect operation, then it's going to let it connect, and it would be so you would have a connection briefly, then it would disconnect. So
Yeah.
it's
all. I'm real close on it. I just need to figure out its interaction with phone clients connecting and things like that. It gets a little weird. It's event triggered. So if there's a connect event, it turns off linking, it turns off incoming, and when all the connects disappear, connect event. What do they call it? I forgot the name of the event, but essentially when it goes to 0, then it turns those things back on.
Right.
But I'm just going over just some little bits and pieces to make sure I don't have surprises built into this. But yeah,
right.
Whatever you find out, just maybe send my way or whatever.
Emails it's actually a feature request that several people have asked about. And so it probably will be a feature in an upcoming release where you can set it to a maximum number of connections, and then at the app RPT layer, it won't let you exceed that. So basically give you an error code back if you try to exceed that. The issue with the Win system originally, why they didn't want more than one person or one connection per node was a software related issue, that it was causing system crashes and whatnot, but that's not been the case now in a long time. So I don't think they're quite as strict about that now as they once were.
Todd just got a gentle talking to the other day, because I was connected to his node and he connected to Win, and they had some things to say about that. So, but it's their system; they can run it the way they want to. I'm fine with that.
Right.
I just need to make the adjustments. Anyway, what I'll do is I'll continue with my scripting endeavors, and then maybe if you find something, send it my way. Let me know. Or
all right.
Thanks for your question, Larry.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Larry. Thanks, David. Next question. Okay. Next question goes to Kevin from Scott, WR0U. Scott, where are you? There you are.
I'm right here. Hey, Kevin. Our local club does events like 5K runs and 10K runs, and we're kind of spread out. So they use 2-meter simplex, and I got a GR300 Motorola radio right now. It's set up on UHF, and I was wondering, would it be better to do a crossband repeater or do a full-fledged repeater, or what your thought is on that? Maybe kind of go from there, I guess, and one thing leads to another here, I guess.
Sure, Scott. I guess either way is certainly a possibility. I would think that going with a more conventional repeater may be easier for the users. Obviously, some radios may not like the transmitting on one band, receiving on the other one well, depending upon what portable radio that they might have. So from the standpoint of having inexpensive radios that would work well with a particular system, likely a conventional repeater would be the better way to go than a crossband repeater. But there's challenges to that. You know, crossband repeater can use a diplexer to, yeah. So in the filtering end and the RF side of things, you know, you can use a single dual band antenna with a crossband repeater. You have one antenna and it transmits and receives as long as it's a dual band antenna. You know, from the standpoint of obviously a VHF repeater, it's going to require you know, a substantial duplexer. UHF here again would be the better way to go because everything would be smaller. So I think that from the standpoint of usability from the users, it would be easier to build a traditional UHF repeater. You know, you can do that out of 2 mobile radios. You're not really that much further out. Mobile duplexers today can be purchased for a couple $100. You know, I would think that you would be able to get something together for not a lot of money. Looks like you've got some things there to tie a couple of Motorola mobiles together, and I think you're on the right track.
Okay, yeah, there are 2 GM300 radios in the cabinet there, the GR300 cabinet with the fan and the power supplies, and it's also got the rec unit on there. So I know on the antennas and stuff, do we need to use a better grade? I know there's common antennas and diamond antennas, and then there's more of the Hustler Neutronics brand. They're a little bit more expensive, so maybe my past experiences are went with the CommScope stuff, but I'm wondering if the Neutronics UHF antenna would be better to support that rather than one of the cheaper common or diamond antennas there.
I've had good luck with just about every brand of cheaper antenna. The Comets and the Diamonds seem to duplex well. They don't hold up well to weather. That's one of the things that, you know, that you would have an issue with. But in this particular instance where you may be putting this thing out and using it for an event and maybe taking it back down or locating it somewhere where, you know, the weather isn't going to diminish the quality of the antenna quickly over time, there's really no need to go with a better antenna. Most of these antennas duplex very well. Even the very cheap, you know, jet streams and different things that you find out there that are inexpensive copies or versions of those. I've had good luck with all of them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your question, Scott, and thanks for the answer there, Kevin. Next question goes to David, and that's from Jeff, KC9TEW.
Thank you very much, Dick. My question's involving All-Star nodes. I built a Pi-Star, and I have the audio or the RF top hat hooked up to it. And I have this terrible hum on my signal. And I have done so many different things short of throwing the Pi out the window. Have you had any problems with that or have any solutions? I mean, I've moved it to different spots in my house. I've run dedicated internet, you know, Ethernet cable to it. I've separated the top hat from the other thing. I'm in the process of the other thing. I separated the top hat from the Pi, and I'm in the process now of putting ferrites on everything. Any other suggestions? Oh, one other thing too I did do was I used a battery pack instead of the wall wart. No difference.
Okay, and you said that now is this what kind of an adapter is this? You said it's Pi-Star or what kind of adapter?
It's a Pi Star. It's a Pi. I think it's a 3.
Okay, so is this for DMR or is this for All Star?
No, All Star.
Okay, so is it like a like one of the Sherry's or Brian's or like one of the Sherry boards, or is it a Pi Star is typically a digital board?
Well, it's a Raspberry Pi that's a controller of the board itself. I don't know whose it is. It was a kit from the ECR website that I saw, and I bought all the pieces and put it together.
Okay. All right. Well, depending on usually the case when you've got a hum getting back into the audio like that, it's due to RF. And it's does this happen? So it's on your audio going into the into the network, or audio coming back out to your HT. So are you hearing it, or are people on the network hearing it?
No, people on the network are hearing it. I've tried it with a couple different handy talkies, but primarily I use a Motorola APX 8000 with the remote speaker mic, which I have turned that off as well. And just on the radio, going to the parrot, just a dead key on the portable, and all I hear is a hum.
Okay, so you just have a loud, is it all hum, or is there audio in there as well?
Well, when I talk, there's audio, but the hum is there. And I know
Okay.
it's driving all my friends on the ECR group nuts. I'm trying to fix it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I mean, most I need to know exactly what kind of board it is, for which adapter you've got, because there are various fixes for the different ones that are out there. So it's a hat that's plugged into the Pi, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So that's is it something like a Sherry? Do you know if you got a Sherry, or there are maybe another couple? Oh, you said it was off the ECR website, or ECR East Coast Reflector website.
Yeah, it came from a guy in California.
A guy in California.
Yeah, the top hat did. I'm sorry, I'm new to all this nodes. This is the first one
Sure,
I've ever
sure.
built.
It may have came from Marshall.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I know the Sherry boards, usually if there is an issue with noise, it's a problem with RF getting into it. And you can find if you just get your HT or whatnot further away, then the problem subsides. I mean, it sounds like you've tried various power supplies, a battery, etc. I don't know. Uh, Now, Marshall's boards, I haven't had as much contact with. I know folks are using them successfully. Um, and I guess I'm questioning why the hum's there all the time. I mean, it sounds to me like there might be a wiring issue or some type of maybe a component issue maybe on it. So you assembled it, or was it pre-assembled?
I was pre-assembled. I just put the uh, little card in there and downloaded the software and
Okay.
plugged in the top hat. The top hat is by USB cable, and I'm kind of leading at I believe it is RF getting in because I've eliminated power supply and I've
Right.
eliminated Ethernet cables. So I'm going to
Right.
try now. My latest trick is going to be to ferrite the heck out of the cable going from the Pi to the top hat, and also the power supply cable, and may as well do the internet cable at the same time and see what happens.
Okay. Well, it's uh usually that RF is getting in when it's getting in and you're hearing it on the network. It's getting in between the receiver, the radio chip, that's the little hooded chip that's on, or hooded module that's on the hat, and the USB audio chip. So it's a very short path that's up there where the RF can get in, typically. And but it sounds like so it's even happening. It's happening anytime it's keyed, even if you are a distance from it. So it's always about the same level.
Yes, correct. I've actually taken my handy talkie and went outside and done it, and outside of my home, and
Right.
I still have it, and there's no difference in intensity.
Okay. Um.
Does your node require a CTCSS tone to activate it?
No.
is your radio's transmitting a CTCSS tone?
No, it's not.
Okay. I thought it may have been PL hum.
And also
Sure.
the radio is on the lowest power setting.
All right. Well, it sounds like to me there's some kind of an issue. It would be find out who you got it from. I mean, or if you said out of California, I don't suppose it's um there could be from several different sources, I guess, depending on. I mean, there are several folks in California that have manufactured them. How recently have you gotten it?
Maybe 2-3 months ago at the most.
Okay. Have you followed up with the manufacturer about what about the noise? Have they had any input for you?
No, not yet. After I'm
Okay.
done with the ferrites, that's going to be my next question to them. I have
Okay.
no idea. After the ferrites, I have no idea what else to do. I've done everything I know to do, from separation to you name it. Different internet or Ethernet cables, different power supplies, battery packs, and it's still there. I can
All
just
right.
key up on the parrot. I don't have to say anything, and I can hear it.
Gotcha. Well, since it came from California, I would say recently here it's either a clear node from Node Ventures, or it's one of Marshall's nodes. And the clear nodes, I know if there are a lot of them out there, and I've occasionally heard of folks that were having issues with noise, but it's kind of been rare. And I don't have I know that there are folks using Marshall's nodes, but I have not had as much experience with any feedback from them. I mean, I haven't heard anything. I've heard of folks that are using them, and I've heard nothing negative. So I presume everybody's having good results with them. So
yeah, I believe it's something on the case that RPS or something like that. I can look it up and find out exactly
okay.
where it came from.
Yeah, well, that'd be the first. Yeah, the first step would I'd follow up with the manufacturer and then just tell them what's going on and see if they've got an idea. And um, it seems like you've gone through the reasonable steps. Does it also, if you just leave it in a receiving and take the antenna off, does it still have the same issue?
I haven't tried that.
That'd be worth a try, just experimentally speaking. Don't transmit with the antenna off, but just try it without the antenna and see if anything changes. But
The only time the hum happens is when I transmit.
Right.
right,
It's
yeah,
not receive only. So
right. Well, I'm just out of curiosity, just to see if there's any change with the antenna off of it.
okay.
There have been some folks that have reported. I know with the Sherrys, the noise from the Bluetooth module or the Bluetooth on the Pis get into the Sherrys, and you have to turn off the Bluetooth. And there's a little way that you do that by configuring the boot.txt. Anyway, you configure it on the Pi in the configuration, and you have to do that from the command line and
Sure.
then reboot.
Okay.
But that's I know that had been an issue with some of the Sherrys, but I know they're also with a later version. I think a lot of the folks with the Sherrys have been using them without turning Bluetooth off, and it wasn't a problem any longer. I don't think.
Okay.
But that's who just like I say, follow up and say, hey, I got a they should have seen this issue before, and they should know exactly what you need to do to fix it. I hope.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you too.
Thanks, Jeff. Good luck. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Next up is a question for Kevin from the K2SO Radio Club in Lancaster, New York. Are they still with us?
Hey, Dick, it's Steve at Lancaster. We already covered our question with Kevin in the pre-meeting. Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to make sure. I didn't know I had you down. I didn't know if that was your question. Thank you. Hello to everybody there at the Lancaster Club. All right, let's take another one for Kevin. This is for Kevin from Alan, N2ZVN. Alan, your question, please.
There we go. I'm unmuted. Thank you, Kevin, for taking my question. What I have is a Motorola GR1225 high power 25 watts low, 45 watts high power. I want to put it on my All-Star node, switch from a simplex node to a repeater. And what I'm looking at is what is the durability of this thing using it on low power for 25 watts. I've heard differing things about it. Now I see that Motorola says high power is 50% duty cycle, 25 watts is continuous. How good is that? Is that overrated, or can I expect a good longevity out of it?
Well, that's an excellent question. And I think that the right answer to that is it depends. Of course, a lot of these radios were in the commercial service before we got them to make ham radio repeaters out of. And I think in a lot of cases, it depends on what livelihood that the radio had before you had it in your hands, whether or not it's going to be have a longevity or not. Certainly, I trust Motorola's specifications. If they say that the radio is going to be okay at continuous duty at whatever wattage, that's generally the case. And especially if you are to blow a little air over the thing, you know, some of these radios are rather small and the heat sinks are not very big. And let's face it, a lot of us guys can get pretty long-winded, and when we do continuous duty, I think takes maybe has a different meaning to some of us. You know, I've got nodes on the air that are transmitting 18 out of 24 hours a day, and when you do that, that really pushes the limits of continuous duty. So yeah, I think you'll be fine, especially if you blow a little air over it. Yeah, I believe you'll be okay.
Okay, thank you. Now this is the GR1225 desktop model, so it has the built-in cooling fan.
Mhm.
And as a benefit, I would switch it to continuous rather than thermally controlled.
Sure.
But my concern is, some of the East Coast reflector nets, Morning Brew is 2 hours, the TechNet can be up to 3 hours, so that's
Yeah.
continuous duty.
Yep. Yeah, just
So-
make sure that that fan is working, because unfortunately, again, with the age of some of these radios, you think the fan's okay, and if you're not paying attention, sometimes they will fail, and of course that's when you get into an issue. So just make sure that the fan's in good shape. Maybe arbitrarily put a new one in before you start your venture down the path of self-destruction.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alan. In the chat, the W3KKC club put in chat that they run a 1225 UHF high power, about 28 watts, with lots of fans. It's been on the air for about a year. Fans are the key. So anything else? I think that was Alan, N5ALN, that put that in. Alan, anything else you would like to add to that?
No, thank you. That answer my question.
I'm sorry, the other Alan.
Okay.
No, sir, just lots of fans. And make sure they're working, like Kevin said.
All right, thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Next one is going to David from WA1NVC. Roger.
Good evening. Part of the question was answered before, David, or sort of. I'm looking at a project for a local club who has Echolink on a PC at a member's house with a radio connected to it, but they now have Comcast Business at the site and would like to move it to the site. I recommended they use an All-Star node, which would give them the Echolink node at the repeater site they want, as well as give them a repeater controller. However, these people are new to this, and I can imagine it getting totally screwed up. So limiting it to one connection would be in my interest as well.
Okay.
So I just thought I'd add that. The other thing I'm looking at is replacing IRLP nodes with All-Star nodes, in particular at locations that don't have a public IP address. And I wonder what kind of problems I'm going to run into doing this.
All right. Well, it's actually with All-Star, it's much easier than IRLP since there's only one port, UDP port, that you have to forward. I guess you want inbound connections for to the system or just outbound. And Echolink, of course, and you're wanting All-Star and Echolink, I presume.
For the club that has the wants to replace Echolink at a house with the system at site, yeah, we're just going to, that looks an easy problem. But the other situation is where I want to replace an IRLP node. And I think this is going to be a bit of a problem because without having some sort of method of connecting to the node remotely, I can't see how you can control it.
Okay. Well, connecting to it remotely is actually very, very easy. And you just use a VPN is the simplest thing to do that. I recommend zero tier. The software is already available for HamVoip. There is a package for it. If you go look on the search the HamVoip mailing list for just the ZEROTIER zero tier, and then you'll see a little quick blurb about how to get it set up and working. That is the easiest VPN software to get going of any that I've come across yet. And you literally can install the software on the Pi. You have to go set up an account. It uses a cloud-based mothership, if you will, to coordinate the connections, but the connections are typically peer-to-peer. So you set up an account with a zero tier organization, and then you go set up a new network. There's a code associated with the network. You tell the All-Star node about that code, and then you install the same zero tier software for your laptop or PC or any other system, and then you go get that code and install it on a PC, and the two can see each other just that quickly. Assuming, with internet connection to both places, boom, you're done. That's it. It's literally that easy. And it's that's of course you can control the node via DTMF codes and everything else, just like you can an IRLP node and everything. But getting into it's not an issue. For if you're just wanting outbound connections, then you don't even have to worry about NAT. With the commercial connection, you can just let it go through NAT and it'll connect outbound just fine. If you want inbound connections as well, then you need to forward your All-Star UDP port, which is usually 4569. And if you want Echolink as well at the site, then you need to forward 5198 and 5199 UDP to the node. But it's usually with Comcast, there are a lot of folks I know using Comcast, and it's really easy to set up with most of the Comcast modems that are out there. And it's again, with zero tier, there's a bunch of different VPNs you can use, but that's the simplest strategy to get access to it, and it doesn't present you any security hazards or anything else. Then you can access everything. You can access Supermon via it, or anything on the node via the VPN. But if you want to open it up so that folks can see, Supermon or other tools from the internet, then you just forward port 80, from the router. So inbound NAT, just forward it to the port 80 TCP to the node as well, and then you'd have access to Supermon. So it's in most cases it's quite simple. Depending if whoever owns the internet or who has the internet account, they may not let you adjust their router. In which case, if they don't, then the VPN is the way to get connected outbound, and then you can get connected to manage remotely. Then you can connect outbound with All-Star with no problem through NAT. So that would get you going real quick. Do you have a existing controller on site, or are you using what kind of controller have you got on the system now, other than IRLP or anything?
Okay, I think I need to unconfuse you a little bit. There were two situations. One was the club that wants to put Echolink at the repeater site. They have Comcast Business. They own the router, and everything's fine there.
Okay.
The issue is the IRLP nodes that are sitting on cellular modems. I was thinking that you probably could get at them with TeamViewer to get at Supermon for control purposes. But now you put up an interesting thought using zero tier and a VPN rather than something like TeamViewer. And I
Yes,
assume it
absolutely.
works with a very similar method as TeamViewer.
Exactly. So I mean, but his TeamViewer lets you connect to a remote system and see the console, whereas with Zero Tier you access it, you'd be able to SSH to it or see the web server, or so it's a different concept, but it's accomplishing the same thing, and it's actually easier to get set up and going since you don't have to have a separate system. Well, I guess you'd have TeamViewer running on the RLP box, but it's if you got a box with fairly good horsepower, but it's um, this is easy to do. I manage systems all over doing that all the time. I mean, there are literally thousands of users that have this type of a setup installed, and it runs quite well.
Well, that's good information. I was looking for a solution. I think that I will look into Zero Tier. It sounds good. And it'll go along with when I looked at my notes here. One other thing I had concerning limiting control, and that's to avoid looping, which I think you know what that is.
Right.
And I can see people who there's very little all-star here. In fact, I think I'll be putting up the first ones around in the area, in this state at least. Jed has a few down on Rhode Island, but people not being familiar with it, they can end up in a situation where they might end up with looping. And so I'd be curious to learn how to limit that as well at some point.
Okay. Well, All-Star typically keeps you out of trouble with looping in that it constantly sends an updated list of nodes that are connected to everybody that's in the network. So typically with All-Star, looping is not a concern. The only scenario where you can end up having problems with looping is if you're trying to connect with permanent connections to multiple different locations, like when a system comes up and the different locations are already linked together. Okay. So
Exactly.
let's say you have a scenario like the East Coast Reflector, where you've got one site in Wilmington, North Carolina, and you got another site out in Texas, and those two sites are linked together already, and then you have a node that's been offline but has a permanent connection where you've tried to connect to both of those different nodes, the node in Wilmington and the node in Texas. Well, when it comes online, it's going to issue that connect command to Wilmington, then it's going to issue that connect command to Texas, and it's going to successfully generate a loop most of the time, because in that split second when it does the connection, that happens before the two sites can notify each other that you've connected to the other place. so it's that's the way a loop lots of times will get generated. But as long as you're careful and only outbound connect to certain networks, like one location, like the Wilmington location or the Texas location, et cetera, then that a loop is not a concern. Really, it's a rarely happens at this point. So it's saying not a concern is probably a little bit too. It can happen, but it's very rare. And in that scenario, you have to kind of work at it to make it happen in normal scenarios. So it's not like RLP in that regard. Now, folks have generated loops with RLP and all as well, where they can have a RLP linked system, and the RLP like a reflector, and the reflector is attached to two different All-Star linked systems, and they go connect to the All-Star system, and then they generate a loop through RLP, or you in theory can do that through Echolink as well, but it's not a most systems you end up with folks connecting only to certain hubs, and it ends up not really being a big deal. Of course, the bigger deal is that if you don't disconnect before you connect somewhere else, and you can cross connect big hubs, and in general, that's a taboo thing, since you don't want to have multiple big hubs connected together. But yeah, the limit. Several folks have asked about being able to limit connectivity, and that's in the wish list for sure.
Right. Well, thanks, Roger, for your questions, and David for your answers. I do not have a question for Kevin. Does someone have a question that they would like to ask Kevin? Then we'll come back. I have one more question for David. Does somebody have a question for Kevin? Raise your hand if you do. I can only look. Oh, Mike. Okay, CMT. I thought you had a question for Mike, but go ahead.
I have a question for both of them, but since it's not more of a question for us, David, but I mean for Kevin, but it's a say thank you to Scott at your first opportunity for the rim light that I put on my system here 8 years ago has run flawlessly in that period of time. I've been through 3 Motorola radios in the same period with the same rim light. So it may be caused burning up radios. But the bottom line is fans, fans, fans. And that's all I had for you. But thank you, Kevin, for being here tonight.
Well, you're very welcome. I'll certainly pass that along to Scotty. Um, Scott and I do collaborate on a lot of our products. And, certainly when somebody asks for help for one of his, I try to jump in and do the best that I can. Unfortunately, I'm not the best source of support for his products. He obviously is, but I'm glad that your rim light is working for you and has outlasted at least 2 or your 3 radios so far. It's kind of funny in a way. I mean, not really, but um, that, that certainly attests to the quality of the radio interface. And that that rim light line is a really neat thing because while most of it's radio specific or controller specific, it's designed for a particular application, and a lot of thought went into those, and it makes it simple. You wrap any of those with HamVoip, and it's just easy. The stuff just works, and that's the best thing. One of the other things I wanted to say before we get too far down the road, I think David's a little too modest in in what he has said so far about HamVoip. One of the things that I want to send home is David put a lot of time and effort into the simple USB channel driver. And, I have an opportunity to use all of the different softwares that are out there. And I think that simple USB channel driver and HamVoip is just the best thing since sliced bread. It works well. It works like it's supposed to. The audio quality is fantastic. And he has endless hours in cleaning the code up that was originally written, and he's perfected it. And it's just one of the best things that's out there, bar none. It works.
I really appreciate that, Kevin. Thank you.
You're welcome. You deserve it, buddy.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. Mike, you had a question for David while you got the floor?
Yeah, David, I've asked you this question before. I'm just kind of beating the drum just a little bit louder, but when can we expect HamVoip to be ready for the Windows platform?
For the Windows platform?
For working on a Windows machine instead of a Raspberry Pi. I thought you were working.
Okay. Well, now there's an x86 release that I've had now for several years. I just haven't released it to the public, but that doesn't run under Windows, not Microsoft Windows. That runs under Linux on a PC.
Okay, so okay, but but and again, I would have to. Here's what I'm driving at. I've got a Geekum mini computer.
Okay,
it's Windows based, and I'd have to reformat that to run dual systems and run that program of yours on the Linux side. Is what you're telling me?
Either that, or you could. Well, what flavor of Windows have you got installed?
11.
Okay, yeah, like 11 Home Edition or
11 Pro.
11 Pro. All right. Well, you wouldn't be able to run a hypervisor. You wouldn't be able to run a virtual machine, I don't think, under 11 Pro. So so the only solution would be to run it, on a like dual booting kind of scenario, and boot Linux and run it with Linux, or boot Windows and run Windows. But you wouldn't be able to run both. I don't think.
I understand I understood. That's what I really meant.
Yeah. Well, I've had they're and a lot of people ask, well, why don't I go? Some folks do have the copies of the PC version out there currently, but they're very few and far between. And I haven't released it publicly because it mainly comes down to support. And it's the Pis are right now, with one release that works across all the different Pis. They are, from a support standpoint, relatively trouble-free and something that I can manage. Basically, if I expand to a lot of different OS versions and PCs and everything else, then it gets to where it's beyond the realm that I can support. So I
understand that.
And I think and a lot of people have asked about well, why don't you get more aggressive with this and everything? I'm like, well, I really it's a time in the day thing more than anything else. But I certainly want to keep the software in the light of what I believe the original intentions were for it to be free for any purpose and any use. And that's so I don't, as you get more people involved, then it gets to be can be a management headache. But right now, Pi's are it, and I will have Pi. I already have Pi 5 support. Pi 5s are a different image because you can only boot 64-bit code on the Pi 5s. But in 99.9% of the usage scenarios that folks have with All-Star, you don't need a Pi 5. You don't need anything that powerful. I mean, honestly, it's a Pi 4 is plenty for 99.9% of the usage scenario, maybe more than 99.9% of the usage scenarios out there. But for single repeaters and dual repeaters, a Pi 3 is plenty. But for hubs, a Pi 4 will suffice quite nicely for virtually everybody. And there are only a few scenarios, and the East Coast Reflector being one of them, where I've thought long and hard about switching to the PC platform or the Pi 5, and I'm going to switch to the Pi 5 here shortly with that. But it's anyway, I hope that helped answer it.
Oh, that answers the question quite nicely. Thank you. I appreciate it, and appreciate all you do for VCR.
Oh, you're welcome. You're sure welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, David. I need a question for Kevin. Somebody raise their hands with a question for Kevin. Hopefully I can see everybody here. It's got to go 2 screens. Nobody's got a question for Kevin?
Oh, I've got a question.
Who was that? David?
David, yeah. Kevin, have you had any thoughts about building any TX and RX strips similar to something that was the Hamtronic scenario or any of that hardware?
Yes, I have. Scott and I actually talked in great detail about doing that very thing, coming up with transmit and receive strips. I think that the problem today is just like you and the support that you would have to give for all the different things that people are asking you to get into. The amount of support that we would have to give to something like that, and especially the amount of testing that would have to be done prior to being able to release a product line like that out to the public is a little bit more than what I want to bite off right now. But we have thought about it. We've thought about it long and hard, and I don't think that we'll do it. Certainly somebody should.
All right. Well, that's a question I have, and I'll chat with you about it. I just thought I'd mention it. There was a project underway, and it kind of unfortunately has fallen by the wayside recently for some unforeseen circumstances. But I'll chat with you about it after the net.
All right.
I actually went ahead and in hopes of being able to do that, believe it or not, the domain name vhfengineering.com was available. Now, you folks will remember that those particular strips were not very good, but the name was pretty neat, and I did register it. I was online one day and decided to get that. So if we do something, it'll probably be under the guise of VHF Engineering. But
bring back memories, okay?
No, nightmares, not memories.
I think we've all had growing pains there. I understand that Larry, KD6G, had raised his hand and I didn't see it. Larry, did you?
Yeah, that's okay. Well, just a quick, actually, it's a thank you to Kevin for working with me on the board with the solder bridge problem a week or two back. Appreciate your time on that.
Sure.
And so the other question is, I know, I think the original recommendation for Pi 3s was no more than 2 interface boards, and then Pi 4s, there was a problem with the Pi 4 software, or rather firmware, and I think that's been resolved. So the question is, how many interfaces will a Pi 4 that doesn't have the firmware problem, how many will it support?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, I think that, yeah.
Okay,
so.
sorry. Okay. I know folks that are using all 4 of them, and apparently using them successfully. I kind of scratched my head a little bit. I have personally tested up to 3 and had no problems at 3, but I believe probably you can get all 4 to work without an issue. The original problem was with up through the Pi 4 version 1.2. There was a firmware, not a firmware. There was actually a hardware issue. It was not. It was reproducible in all the different flavors of OSs that were out there, and it didn't just impact audio adapters. If you plugged into USB to SATA hard drive adapters, with two SATA hard drives on there, SSDs, it would completely mix them together. And so it was definitely a USB hardware issue up to 1.2. But at 1.4, there wasn't a 1.3, I don't believe, that was publicly released. The 1.4 forward, I think it's 1.5 now. As far as I know, there are no problems with any of the 1.4s or 1.5s. And I do have a recent 1.5 here I've tested, and it does work fine.
Okay, so that's on the...
As long as you're running a HamVoip node, it'll work
right
with 4.
Right. Okay, and so like a Pi 3B plus
2.
Yeah, typically I'd recommend no more than 2 on a 3B plus.
All right.
I know some folks that are running 3 actually, but in all these scenarios where with running with the Pi 3s or the Pi 4s version 1.4 forward, you just end up with some choppy audio with more than, so it's not, the nodes continue to work and everything. It just, there is a chop that gets in there that you can't resolve with software. It's a USB related issue that's going on, but but even the 3s will support. I know one user that has a 3B plus with 3 nodes on it, 3 different, but say 2 of them are usually active, and the third one's not. Is a receiver that's. I think he's listening to the railroad with it, so it's not active. A whole lot of the time.
Okay, I see. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I got 2 questions for Kevin. I'm going to hold those M3 LAD and KK4 IOH. There's a question for David that's been in queue here from the W2SO group. Back to the clubhouse, W2SO.
Hey, Dick, by coincidence, Larry asked the same question we did about the Pi 4 and the audio processing, so that was good timing on his part, and we appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Steve. All right, back to N3 LAD. Question for Kevin.
Yes, hello. Good evening, Kevin. Hope things are going well for you. We had on the air a Kenwood TKR 720. Was on the air for probably almost 30 years. It has died. It has been replaced with a TKR 750. Now, I want to put the 750 on Echolink. I would like to run the repeater at like 8 watts into an amp and come out at 80 watts. Is that something that's going to be viable for that repeater?
Yeah, you shouldn't have any trouble with that at all, Chuck.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you, Kevin.
You're very welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, buddy. Take care.
Yep.
Thank you, Chuck, for your question. KK4IOH, you had your hand up.
Okay, Kevin, this is probably one that's going to make several people happy. With the TS64s now being unobtainium, we've literally gone around and had people dig in drawers and boxes and anything to try to find them, to no avail. I know you were working on some stuff for tone decoding or encoding, I guess decoding maybe, but any more developments coming for that, or is that going to be available? We're working with a lot of DR1Xs and 2Xs that would like to be able to put in remote and still have PL, decode and encode on.
Yeah, so I lucked out. I was building some squelch products using a CML chip called a FX465 D5, and that's a really small integrated circuit that unfortunately they stopped making in 2016. I found through the supply chain a manufacturer that had bought about 1,000 FX or MX 465 DWs. Now, the DW chip is about 3 times the size as the D5. So I did a circuit board relay and changed all of the squelch products that I have that have CTCSS decoding built in to that product. And I bought 400 of the 1,000 chips that were available. So we're good. We're going to have lots of product available. I've sold lots, but I still have lots left. And I'm told that I can dig into the rest of the lot whenever I need to. So I think we're good to go. This is a proven product that works just as well as any TS series product. In fact, we have people that say that it works better. I don't know that it works any better as far as the capability of decoding a CTCSS tone, but I can tell you that the integrated audio filter has a lot less group delay. The distortions are lower. It's a wonderful product. You can take your receive audio and put through this thing, and it doesn't make it sound boxy like the old TS32s and 64s did. So that's available on the website as a single CTCSS decoder. That product is called the CT30 DW. I also have noise squelch and CTCSS decoders that are paired together on a single board. And that includes a MyCore noise squelch and then one of these CML based CTCSS decoders. So if you've got a repeater that does not have a very good noise squelch to begin with, certainly the Yaesu DR1X is, that's a RSSI based squelch detection system. A lot of us guys, Dick being one of them, we can hear this stuff down into the noise, right? Unfortunately, the squelch, even if you've got it set at the most critical position on a Yaesu System Fusion repeater, the guy disappears, right? And it's like, why did it cut him off? I could still hear him. And stuff like that just drives me nuts, right? So the squelch products that we have a genuine Motorola squelch chip still available. Believe it or not, I've got very limited quantities, but I started in 2014 to reverse engineer the famous M6709 7716 MyCore squelch chip. I was successful in doing that. So we have squelch boards now that use discrete components and common integrated circuits that do exactly the same thing that the MyCore squelch chip does. So we're going to have those indefinitely into the future. I've got a big stock of CTCSS chips, so we're going to be good for those into the future. So I think we'll be good to go. Just look on the website for the noise squelch and tone products, and everything that you see there is pertinent and available.
All right, I'll have Alan order some since you know his mailing address. Thanks for my question.
Sure.
But he didn't get the Christmas card. Thank you. You can't beat that Motorola chip, can you? Boy, that was the old MyCores. There was never a better squelch out there, Kevin, as you well know.
I'll see Kevin at Dayton. I'll get a handshake or something instead of the Christmas card.
Hey, come see us at Dayton, okay?
Kevin, do you need any of those MyCore squelch chips?
Yes, yes. If you have some, Henry, get with me, buddy.
Okay. Who else has got a question tonight? My board is clean here. Had some very good questions. Anybody have a question for either David or Kevin or for anyone in here? Oh, Roger, you're my best customer here tonight. WA1 NVC.
I was going to make a comment because people were talking about fans. Fans tend to fail. And since this picture of the site behind me is a public safety site, I wanted something that was not in a plastic box and wouldn't fail. I don't know whether you can see it or not, but this is the Raspberry Pi 4 in a metal case with no fans. And it actually runs cooler than a plastic case with a fan in it. It's made by a company called Geekworm. You can buy them on Amazon for $10. I did some testing, plastic cases versus metal, where the case is the cooling, and these work out much better than the plastic cases. I'm amazed. And I also found a review on Tom's Hardware. It said the same thing. So avoiding fans avoids failures.
And one thing I'll mention, if running Pi 3s in cabinets, I don't have any fans on any of the Pi 3s that I have. The P3B pluses there at this point that I have deployed. Though I have fairly large heat sinks, own the SoC chips on the boards. So yeah, it's a copper heat sink that is designed for a VGA chip, basically. So it's a pretty good size copper heat sink. They're fairly pricey, but in that regard, it's solid copper, and you get what you pay for. And I even sites that are get up 100+ degrees in the summertime Fahrenheit, they don't have any problem with the pies overheating. You end up with trouble with the PA decks overheating before the pies overheat. And it's you can also plug in USB temperature sensors, and all the software is available on the Pi, so you can sense temperature at various places in the cabinet. And then for example, I'll set a PA to low power or disable it and send out an email message if something's getting into trouble. But I agree that the keeping stuff cool, keeping air flowing over it is the name of the game, and managing it and keeping it running for longevity. Something else that I found, my situation with pies has evolved substantially over the last 7 or 8 years, and all the pies that I have deployed at this point actually run on Wi-Fi. And a lot of people they cringe when they hear the thought of something running on Wi-Fi, but I literally have the pies that I use. I solder a LM2596 based DC to DC converter to the board, so it's soldered to the pins, the power pins on the bottom of the board, and powered off the radio or repeater power supply directly. So it's powered, like in the case of like a TKR 750 or 850 repeater, I get power off the back of the repeater and power the Pi directly. I have in this case, the RA35, I think it's RA30s, is one of Kevin's adapters that I'm using mostly these days, plugged into the repeater via a little 4-inch long USB cable, and then no other wires. That's it. It's connected via Wi-Fi. And that has solved, in a lot of sites, particularly with broadcast transmitters, that has solved a lot of my problems with broadcast RF getting back into the Pis and into the gear and causing issues. It also has solved all of my problems with USB resets and thunderstorms. A lot of these repeaters that I manage are on tall TV towers and whatnot, and we'll have lightning plasma flowing beside, it's right beside the cabinet, literally before it's actually contacted the tower. And whenever that would happen previously with PC-based systems, I'd always, in the best case scenario, I'd have a USB reset, and the software would have to reset and everything. But that pretty much has completely gone away for any scenario that I've got, any system I've got set up this way. I have all of them set up this way across the board on all the repeaters I've got out there, and most of them have been deployed at this point using this scenario for 5+ years. So it's worked quite well. Folks question what kind of access points I use. Well, I'm using Ubiquiti NanoStation locos, which are now a little bit, they got hard to get. I think they're available again, but I'm using 2.4 gigahertz locos pretty much across the board, which are, inexpensive access points. Everything set to 0 dBm power. So the access point set to 0 dBm power. The Pi, I've got the Wi-Fi turned down to 0 dBm. All this stuff sealed up in a metal box. So I've got a number of them sitting in places that, you have to plan to go reach them, and they all just run quite well. So it's they definitely power is the name of the game, and keeping it cool is the name of the game. Anyway, just a few thoughts.
All right, thank you. I got another question. From N9PNO. My apologies. I thought you had changed your mind on the question before the program started, and I didn't have you down. N9PNO, your question, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody that's on the Zoom call. You're a great bunch of guys. I'm amper.org guy, so I moved from Chicago to Iowa, so I need some help out here. I'm doing a stack of GM 300 radiuses, and I had to put an ID around it. I have an ID-O-matic, and when I turn the system on, it only IDs once. If anybody has a remedy for that, it's supposed to ID for a certain amount of time and stuff. I do have the software. I've had the software, and it's all configured right, but I don't know if anybody can comment. Bunch of great guys there, and thank you for the Zoom call. 73.
Well, thank you. Anybody have a solution for that? I did forget the question. My apologies.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have very much experience with the ID-O-matic. I did help the original inventor of it add duplex operation to it and audio muting, but that was like, I don't know, 12 years ago. I haven't had one in my hands since. So.
Who else has a question here tonight? Kind of winding down. Anyone else have a question?
I have a quick one. I don't know if my hand raise is being seen or not, but
I'm sorry, there's a lot of screens to look at. Who is that?
This is Lawrence N6YFN out here in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Go right ahead, Lawrence.
Thanks. First, Kevin and David, thanks for all your help. We run about a 7-machine network out here in Henderson Amateur Radio Club in Las Vegas, and have RA42s and HamVoip exclusively. Question is the best opinion for doing the emphasis de-emphasis when interfacing with like a SLR 5700 repeater. Is it better to have the repeater do the emphasis de-emphasis and then leave simple USB as basically flat, or take it flat out of the radio and then have simple USB do it, or does it make a difference?
I'll take the first stab at it. So what I have always found is if you let All-Star Link do the filtering or pre-emphasis and de-emphasis, no matter what radio that you have connected, the network sounds the same. So in my instance, when I first started getting into this, I had a myriad of different radios, GE, Motorola, Tate, lots of different radios. Allowing All-Star to do everything allowed the system to sound much more alike as you traveled between, one area into another, from one repeater into another. The system sounded identical. So maybe that doesn't actually answer your question, but that's my preference, is to let the application tailor the audio however that it is necessary.
And I would agree with that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and I agree with that.
Okay, so kind of keep it flat out of the radio and then have simple USB enable in emphasis and de-emphasis, and simple USB is typically the preferred method that you guys found.
Well, obviously, from the standpoint of the radio, anytime that you're feeding the modulator directly and you're recovering audio out of the demodulator directly, you're going to have your best source of audio and you're going to have your best um, transfer of audio from the standpoint of the transmitter is going to be as transparent as possible. Now, in the case of the SLR, there's a lot of things going on in that radio from the digital domain. So it's not like an analog radio that's um, that's wider is really not the right word, but you get my idea. There are other things that are going on. From the standpoint of FM, I don't know that you're going to necessarily hear those differences because of the things that are going on in that radio in the digital domain on analog. But again, if you let the application take care of it, then there aren't any differences because every radio manufacturer has their own, while it's to satisfy a standard, that there's a wide area there. If you've ever looked at the curve for what it is, I mean, for it to pass FCC specifications, there's a pretty wide area there. And, we want this all to be reciprocal. Whatever happens from the standpoint of, the user's radio generates the pre-emphasis. The de-emphasis happens at the repeater. And then obviously pre-emphasis has to happen again, and the user's radio has to de-emphasize. In the best case scenario, all that has to be reciprocal in order for the thing to sound like what it did when it left the user's radio, right? And in this case, I think that the application has the best ability to make sure that that happens correctly at each turn.
Great. Thank you guys both, and for the East Coast Reflector for the great program tonight. Appreciate it.
Lawrence, could I get your call sign, please? I missed it.
Yeah, November 6, Yankee Foxtrot, November.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I gotta say hello to my friend Rashid. We're gonna give a prize out tonight for whoever's come from the farthest. But Rashid, 3 Papa 8 Fox Peter. He's on Mauritius Island in the Indian Ocean. I guess he can't talk. He's on his iPhone, but I want to say hello to him. We haven't seen him for a while. It's probably as far away as you can get from New York. So thanks for coming. If we did give out prizes tonight, he certainly would get it. Jim, W2COP was in the chat box here. He has a question for Kevin.
Good evening, everybody. Kevin, I have a question, just a little bit reminder of what you just talked about with letting the All-Star node handle emphasis, de-emphasis, etc. Can we talk a little bit about USB radio versus simple USB and the long-standing issue of distorted warbly audio with the USB radio driver versus simple USB? I see the smile on Dick's face when I'm talking about this. And is there any hardware that handles that better, say, instead of maybe a PC running an x86 platform, running USB radio versus, say, a Pi? What's your experience and what's the latest and greatest on those developments? And the ability, of course, for USB radio to handle PL, to handle emphasis, de-emphasis when it's in USB radio mode.
Sure. So my experience with USB radio started back in 2010 with mainly with a version of the software called Zipper. It was a release that was generated by a friend of ours that unfortunately has also become a silent key like Jim Dixon. So Steve Hinkey was the reason that DSP was added to the All-Star Link distribution. He's the person that was responsible for allowing the cheap and simple USB interfaces to be utilized with this. First, the software that was that David originally got his feet wet with, as well as me, and the quad PC radio cards. That came a long way after Steve Hinkie got involved. And so the version of the software that I still have running at some sites is is x86 versions. The computers have enough horsepower to run the radio interfaces properly in the USB radio channel driver, and I don't see the issues that other people complain about. Everybody knows that I'm a stickler when it comes to audio and squelch operation, and I would be the first to admit if there's some kind of an issue, I wouldn't be running it, over tens or hundreds of installations. I don't know how many repeaters that I have collectively, myself and with others. It's a lot. I lost track years ago. So my point is, when the application is put on the correct kind of hardware, it will run properly and correctly. Now, unfortunately, the USB radio channel driver is not something that anybody has spent a lot of time with in any of the versions of the application. It's there, and it will run even on a Raspberry Pi. I know I've got a couple Raspberry Pi nodes that are running USB radio channel driver. Only one, because we're talking about a lot of processing that has to happen. But I've got several Raspberry Pis running a version of the software that was put out by Steve and Mike Zingman. It's a DV switch version. And again, I'm not having any issues at all with that. So not sure where others are at, but I don't see those issues when it's built properly and put on the right kind of hardware, run correctly. Obviously, you can't run 3 or 4 versions or 3 or 4 nodes on a Raspberry Pi running USB radio. There isn't enough horsepower to do that. But there is enough horsepower on even a Raspberry Pi 3 to run USB radio. I know. I'm doing it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm doing it also. A little bit of distortion. But I just thought your comments were interesting about letting the DSP handle things like preemphasis and deemphasis.
Well, from the standpoint of HamVoip, those things are available in the simple USB channel driver.
Right.
So that
right.
my references to them prior in this meeting was really about the simple USB channel driver being able to handle preemphasis and deemphasis correctly. And again, that's an attest to David's willingness to work on that channel driver and make it work correctly. Unfortunately, that's not available in every distribution and version of All-Star Link, but it is in HamVoip.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm just wondering, and maybe David can answer this, if those turning on those extra features, if you want to say turning on, enabling the node to handle the emphasis and preemphasis, have you noted any additional load on the CPU for that and running multiple nodes on that on a Pi, say?
Using simple USB under HamVoip, it runs fine. And the entire DSP architecture that in the simple USB channel driver and HamVoip is completely different than the original code that was there. And some of it is actually even multi-threaded in HamVoip. There is so there shouldn't be any problem with the preemphasis, deemphasis, or it also has a DCS filter in HamVoip, which is a brick wall filter for filtering out DCS audio inbound. If you have like DCS decode and that's ending up in your received audio that's coming into the node, it will pretty well brick wall filter that out. So that's, again, those are filters that are in HamVoip in the simple USB channel driver, and it should run multiple, at least two on a Raspberry Pi 3 B plus or more, probably three successfully, all running every feature turned on without any additional issues. I agree that on a fast PC, the USB radio channel driver under the original version of All Star, which original version I ran was based on ACID. I still had issues with some warbly audio, and incidentally, Doug WA3DSP used to always point it out. But I'm talking back here. I'm talking 10 years ago now, virtually. But the zipper version has a different USB radio channel driver. It's considerably different. And I don't know if that's ever been integrated across or not into the current ASL code base, but it was substantially better, quite frankly, from what I saw in solving some of the problems. But with HamVoip, there are also some developments that are in way. There's been another channel driver that's been in development now for I guess about 4 years. It's Chan IO pipe that is designed to handle DSP in a whole new way, and it basically implements a lot of features. Which I won't get into here tonight, but it is in limited release at this point. There are some folks using it. It's not in the main stream, but it handles a lot of the kinds of things that you need to do with analog radios. But and it will run again multiple nodes in parallel, no problem on a Pi 3 or Pi 4. But hopefully that helps.
We will look forward to that when it gets released. I'm trying to put a new site online which has 3 repeaters and a remote base, and it's going to take a lot of work. So thank you very much, guys. Using pretty much every iteration of what you got out there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jim, for your question. And who else has got a question? It's getting late here. Everybody's probably wants to get out of here, but we'll stick it out. Anybody else got a question or comment? KI7ZRI, Don has a quick question.
Yeah, this is Don KI70i. I have a question regarding the actual HamVoip image. I have not been able to find actually all your build and release scripts. Are you ever going to release that, or do you kind of keep all that in-house?
Currently, that is all kept in house. It is the release is binary only in everything that's out there currently, except for again a handful of folks have copies of the code, but it's basically a binary release.
Okay, that's cool. I was just interested. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Who else do we have? I don't see any hands. Check my screens here. Well, we had 86 people tonight. That is a new record for the East Coast Reflector times 2. I think we were somewhere around 40 for all of our other presentations, and 86 tonight is like, wow. Totally.
Actually, 87.
87. Oh my gosh, 87. Thanks, Ricky. Oh, that's a new record, and that just is what happens when you get David and Kevin together in the same room. All I can do is thank you both very, very, very much for coming. I'd like to do this again. I'd like to have a presentation once a month, not necessarily by you guys, but we all need to pool our efforts here. We had 87 people tonight. You got to have some contacts, whether it be on D-Star, Wires X. Let's keep doing this. Thursday night can be jam night on the East Coast Reflector Zoom room.
Yeah, I can get Scott Curry to come over and we can do a whole presentation on VARA.
Great.
I know that's not really the East Coast Reflector thing, but I'm sure that there's a lot of the users of ECR that are doing those types of things, and it's certainly an interest to all ham radio operators, right? So
absolutely, it does not have to be an East Coast Reflector thing. And that's something about our meet and greet. I want to tell everybody, probably should have said before so many left. What is it, June 8th? Western New York, we're having a meet and greet. And it's not the East Coast Reflector. We're putting it on, but it's for everybody. We've got so many of the clubs in the area. The Lancaster Club is a big part of it, and we're trying to get some of the other clubs. And it's just a gathering place. It's ham radio.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the East Coast Reflector. So, Kevin, I'd love to see you come down. Are you still in Florida? Are you up? Where are you?
No, we're permanently in Florida.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. Well, you know, with this type of a meeting set up, it doesn't matter where we are. So
and we will probably Zoom our meet and greet anyway, like we did last year. So love to have you. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Like I said, Rashid, I think traveled the farthest on Zoom from the middle of the Indian Ocean. But for all of us, for all the facilitators here at the East Coast Reflector, thank you guys. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, David. And,
you're very welcome, Dick. I've attended a lot of these type of online Zoom presentations, and I can tell you that this is first class all the way. I really like how you folks have run this presentation, and it was a pleasure to be able to be a part of this one. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I do see Alan, N5ALN, he's come back up to the mic. I don't know if you looked in the chat box, but Vicky made a Christmas card for you to send to Kevin. So that's taken care of.
Saw it. This is going to turn into a good thing already. I like it.
Well, you got to come back, okay? I'm going to stop the recording now.